Good evening, denizens of the YouTube metal sphere. My name, legal title, is Brainsmasher. I have been cooking up this video in particular for quite some time. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be good, but I hope to impart upon your lives some extraordinary black metal that you may or may not have been aware of in the past. So, obviously the title and the whole idea behind this topic is ornery, to say the least, but I've always felt like the metal world has kind of there's a hallmark, there's a benchmark album, and that is Panzer Division Marduk by Marduk, where it was kind of a game changer for a band of that caliber to come out with something that was just 100% aggressive. And honestly, I didn't fall for it. I don't love Panzer Division Marduk. And there's a lot of reasons, and we'll talk about a lot of those reasons going forward. So I'm going to defend my thesis here going forth. If you're curious, so I'm going to be talking about some like very intense and energetic topics, so I didn't want to play like blasting metal behind me the whole time. So actually I'm playing Sombrous in the Umbra in the background. So I just kind of want to start from the beginning. A blast beat is a drum beat wherein there's a lot of different ways to play a blast beat, but I think the most rudimentary way, the earliest iteration of the blast beat, is where the drummer's foot and hand hit a cymbal. Well, the foot hits the bass drum, a hand hits the cymbal on one hit, and the other hits the snare drum. And you alternate between the kick and a cymbal or hi-hat and the snare. So you're going ba-do, 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 ba-do. So you speed that up, and it turns into this just kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, to varying speeds. The blast beat game in the last couple of years has gone crazy. There's been a lot of people advancing the technique in a lot of different ways, and I kind of don't care. I think there's a good way to do it. I think 1 foot blasting is my preferred method. It just kind of sounds punchier, and it's, I don't know, it just kind of, it's easier to play as a drummer. And I just kind of think once you break that threshold of breaking into playing a blast beat with 2 feet, it just kind of starts to unravel into other techniques that can achieve wild things. But I'm a traditionalist of the blast beat. I prefer the 1 foot blast beat. I think it sounds better. Not all of these drummers are 1 foot blasters whatsoever. I don't even know. It is pretty hard to hear and tell. But like I said, in the last few years, they've gotten to, like, once the 200 BPM speed was broken 10 years ago or so, roughly, things really started to get crazy. So we've gotten up into the like 300 beats per minute speeds, and that is just absolutely insane. The thing about that is you really make a lot of compromises in your playing when you strive for nothing but speed. You can only get a certain amount of volume out of your drums when you're hitting them, tapping them as lightly as you need to be able to hit a certain amount of speed. So that's why I kind of felt like the 200 BPM was kind of the ceiling there for like what I like to hear a black metal drummer do in this style of music. But so like this kind of style, I feel like began early 90s. You've got your Immortals, Battles in the North, I think is kind of a hallmark of that caliber. Pure Holocaust is certainly kind of building to that point too. And there were drummers who obviously played blast beats in death metal and to varying degrees, but I think there was definitely like a certain time period, 93, 94, where bands started to really base their whole sound for certain albums or whole discographies around the fast, relentless blast beats. And like, it's kind of hard, I think, for a band to remain creative while just, I guess, staying on that level of intensity for such a long duration and such an unrelenting caliber. So it's hard to do. I'm not going to say that, like, there's a ton of bands out there who can, you know, top Panzer Division's Marduk easily. It's definitely a hard thing to do. I played in a black metal band and I blasted a lot, and it was hard. I wasn't anywhere near 200 BPM whatsoever. I want to leave a couple of clips in here. I'm going to try and leave a bunch of links down below for you to check out kind of various things, so you can kind of just like explore more about what I'm talking about. Sometimes I kind of feel like I shoot for an audience of what I'm calling like black metal experts or whatever, which is really like the audience that I like to cultivate. But sometimes I feel like I might kind of skip over some people who might not, who might just want to hear my perspective on what I think of certain rudimentary elements of the albums that I talk about. So I wanted to kind of like put some clips in here to illustrate what I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to put some links down below. And hopefully I want to try and find like a service here in a couple of soon, where I can start putting together playlists of obscure music. I know Spotify is kind of like one thing, but it's kind of really hard to find. Like most of the stuff I have probably isn't going to be on Spotify whatsoever. So anyways, I digress. I should kind of start digging into these albums. So again, take this with a grain of salt. I'm being completely ornery by saying all these albums are better than Panzer Division Marduk, but they're alternatives to that style if you prefer things like that. All of these are super intense, super blasty, unrelenting, violent black metal records. And I've kind of grown out of this kind of style over the years as I've gotten older, because it's kind of hard to take. It really, it's just intense. So let's just start off with one of my absolute favorites. These guys are, this is just inhuman blasting. I don't know what speed this guy is at. I don't know how to like measure 200 BPM, 300 BPM, whatever. I don't know how to tell that kind of stuff. And I don't know if there was a app or a website or whatever where you could upload a song and have it detect the BPM. I think there are, but I don't think if you put this kind of thing into it, it would be able to figure it out. Anyways, one of my favorites is Empalagon from Germany with Black Dominated Annihilation. This is a pretty crappy logo, isn't it? This thing is, it's inhuman, frosty, monochromatic black metal, and the blasting is just, it can't fucking be possible. It's impossible to imagine a drummer actually playing these blast beats. A lot of people, I think, have rumored that it's sped up, but I've found footage of this drummer, and they're still active. He's on Instagram of him playing this speed. And it's like, it's not a traditional technique whatsoever, for sure. But it makes for a great album. This thing is violent. It's so visceral and just, it's unthinkably frosty and raw and nasty. There's a lot of these albums that are going to be more polished sounding. This might be the least polished sounding of the whole pile, but this is an album I will take to my grave being evangelical about. It's so good. It is grim as all hell. I believe Autopsy Stench, put this out many years ago. You can probably pick this up if you can find it for under $20 or so. A lot of people just don't know about Empalagon, and it's a crime. It's an amazing release. I got this in a couple of weeks ago. I've been wanting a copy of this for probably 20 years. Legion and their demo, Blood Aeons. Legion were, don't think they're active anymore. They were a Swedish band with 4 or 5 albums. They really did put a lot of effort into putting out some great releases for a short period of time. These guys were from Sweden, and the way that I found out about Legion originally was that this drummer was not the drummer that replaced Fredrik Andersson right after he left Marduk, but somewhere around that time period. I want to say 2005 or 6, somewhere around there. He spent maybe an album or two with the band and then went on to do other things, particularly Legion. Their discography is pretty flawless, but this thing, nothing is faster in this band's discography than On Swift Wings, that song in particular from this demo. I love this thing. Blood Aeons by Legion. I don't think a lot of people know about this thing, so I'll probably put a clip in here for you. Neodawn Productions. It's hand numbered. Didn't pay much for it, but I waited 20 years to be able to find a copy of this thing since I found out about it. And it came out in 98, I want to say. 2000. Sorry. So a lot of people I think know Deteriorate's Rotting in Hell. It's kind of a mid-90s death metal. I don't know. A lot of people I think have kind of revived its popularity in the metal community. And it's great. It's a great death metal album. It's American death metal. They're from Philly. But a lot of people don't know that after Rotting in Hell, they did an album right after that. Rotting in Hell came out in 93, and the songs on their second album were recorded in 94 and 95, and their style was a complete 180. I don't think I've ever heard another metal band do such a quick turnaround in styles from Rotting to Hell to the Senectuous Entrance by Philadelphia's Deteriorate. This is awesome, and it's so weird to have a band with two great albums that are completely different in their discography. The riffing on this thing is awesome. The vocals are just, it sounds like a fucking bleeding throat just gargling out into the microphone. It's so intense and good. The riffing is just masterful. The leads, the harmonies are excellent. It just leads to this like visceral kind of violent style. The riffs are catchy. It's just interesting the way that they kind of use some rhythmic staccato kind of interplay in there. It's really fun. I haven't looked into it enough to know if the whole band lineup changed or like which members stayed and which went. I do know that this is a different drummer than what was on Rotting in Hell. And this drummer is really, really, really fast, and according to Metal Archives, has never played on any other album, which is weird. This thing is just blazing fury, the Senectuous Entrance. Check that one out, will ya? I've been evangelical on my channel about this one for quite some time. I'm not going to let up on it. This is Black Dawn's Blood for Satan. This is one of the most evil black metal albums there ever was. It's one of the last good releases from Necropolis Records, one of my all-time favorite record labels. These guys were from Finland. They played in other bands like Enochian Crescent, and they also did a couple of other releases after this one, which aren't quite as great. This thing is just magnifique. perfect. Real slick sounding. The drums are real kind of loud in the mix. Everything sounds real nice and polished on this. In fact, I think I would prefer if Panzer Division Marduk sounded more like this album than it does. Obviously, I have this huge beef with Abyss Studios sound draining the soul from a lot of albums. But this thing sounds rich and full and vibrant. It sounds like a real band just blasting away these blasphemous hymns. It's kind of like it's really visceral. It seems like a band on stage just absolutely ruling a crowd. I love this album. It's catchy as all hell. A lot of like well-placed and tastefully done samples on this thing. Love it. So next are a band from Italy. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Mater Tenebra, Matertenebra. And this is their first album, Necroterna Demoniaca. I haven't had this in my collection for very long. In fact, I bought this specifically for this video. I have had their other album, Sangue, in my collection for 18 years or something like that. It's awesome. This might be the most unrelenting and blasty album in this entire video. This is... I can't even believe how 1,000,000% intense this thing is. The riffing is great, but like I said, it's hard to be creative, I would think, as a guitarist, to scaffold your riffing rhythmically when all you have to go on is like, it's kind of like just an open palette. You can do whatever you want as long as you like. The thing is, if you don't know, like, blasting kind of works well because the tremolo riffing can rhythmically match the blasting in a good band. It's hard to pull off super well, but studio tricks can make it sound really good. Anyways, I digress. This is an awesome album from an Italian band. I don't understand why nobody seems to talk about Mater Tenebra. This thing is awesome. Their other album, Sangue, is also incredible, super blasty. Weird thing about this is I kind of did some research and looked into it. The drummer of this band, insanely talented, went on, what he's doing now is running a baby metal fan Instagram. There's a fall from grace, if I ever saw one. It's crazy. So next is a Canadian band. Started out back in like 94 or so, just doing some kind of grim, raw, black metal kind of stuff. And then they had an album called Dance of the Immortals, which is really good, kind of like Immortal style, frosty Canadian kind of black metal, but not very fast. But they really picked up the speed here with Haunty Says. Not sure what that means or how to pronounce it correctly, but Holy Records put this thing out. This thing rules. This maybe be... The blasts on this album are very fast, and there is a ton of blasting on it, but there's also a lot of other kind of various tempos on this thing. I feel like the palette and the tool belt that this drummer works with is super amazing. The blasting is really fast, but he does a lot of other things too that are really fast. The riffing, again, awesome. It's hard to do a video of like 10 or 15 albums that are very much in the same style, and to like pick apart the various tiny little minutia details that can differentiate one from another. They aren't, like, honestly, to most people, all these albums are going to sound exactly the same. I'm not going to lie there. These guys are awesome. I believe this is the last album they did. I don't know if they're still active or not. I don't think they've like broke up, but they haven't really done anything since, I don't know. When did this one come to fruition? Fields of Mercilessness is the key track to check out on here. Rules. Recorded in 2003, so God, 20 years ago. Doesn't seem real. So, another album that I bought specifically for this video. I just kind of started to just put together a list of these bands, and I just kind of thought about bands that I thought would fit into this for several months. I started like putting this together when I started talking to Simon about this kind of thing back in, I want to say, August or so. So several months I've been just kind of like culling through bands that I knew, and I had never checked out this band's full length, Inferos. Pagan Winner were a band that I loved because of their EP, The Cult of Flesh. It was pretty blasty, and it had a cover of a Darkthrone song, Under Funeral Moon, I want to say it was. And it was cool to hear them do like a speedy version of a Darkthrone song. And that just kind of got me thinking, like, I know that drummer could blast. I know those guys really went on to do some blasty stuff, but I never checked out anything they did. This artwork is probably the reason that I don't think anybody gives a shit about this thing. It's pretty dumb. But again, unrelenting, absolutely maniacal, hyperspeed blasting through the whole thing. I'm just realizing right now, I'm going to talk about an album that I forgot to put on this list, and I have on CD, and I absolutely love. Anyways, Germany's Pagan Winner are not to be messed with. This thing is absolutely throat slitting. I have a couple of releases that I actually don't have physical copies of that I wanted to tell you about. Adversam from Italy, and their debut release called Anima Adverte. So like upon working on this list, I just had this eureka moment of an album that I hadn't listened to in well over a decade. And I never got around to buying a copy of it. I'm not sure if it's rare or not. But anyways, it's really, really good. Kind of more like a cosmic sort of sound to it. Came out in 99 on Scarlet Records. The Oracle, thank you. Another Italian band. I don't necessarily think of Italy as being like the home of a lot of blasty bands, but in putting together some of this, I've kind of found some Italian bands that are of this ilk. Their demo is kind of speedy. It's called The Black Diamond Gates. It's pretty good, but it's not anywhere near as blasty as this thing. And their next album wouldn't be until 2008, which I haven't even heard this one. It's called Proclama. I don't know. It's just like there's a real sweet spot time period between like 94 and 2004 where these things just were really choice. So Adversam's and Adverte, don't miss that one. Another one that I haven't managed to get a copy of because I also like completely forgot about this band until I was thinking about this video. They're called Dead of Winter, and they're from Canada. And this was the third release that Profound Lore ever put out. Came out in 2005. The album is called At the Helm of the Abyss. This is a little more on the raw side of things. The drumming is just blasting 100% of the time. But it has this real like cavernous kind of echoey sort of sound quality to the whole thing. It's not the best sounding for clarity. It's kind of a headphone album, I guess. It's one of those albums. I like a guitar tone or like a grim, raw kind of black metal sound that kind of makes you have to tune your ear to listen closely to what's going on. It pulls me into an album. And this is kind of one of those albums that does that for me. It's really, really raw and violent and visceral and speedy. I would not be surprised if these guys were touched up in the 200 BPM mark. Now, that's not a big deal. I feel like a lot of death metal drummers ever since like Derek Roddy kind of started to propel this kind of thing in death metal. But like, I get it. Like, death metal is fast. A lot of that kind of stuff went crazy with that from the 90s. But black metal, I feel like when it's blasty and intense, it's doing that a lot of the time, at least these kind of bands. And so I think I kind of want to differentiate speed in this context because it also takes a lot of stamina to be able to do this kind of thing for a song or a live set or recording an album and rehearsing, not to mention. The death metal just kind of does that all the time, and I don't feel like there's a lot of death metal bands that do like 100% blasting and riffing that is kind of scaffolded upon the blasting in the way that these albums are. Hope that makes some sense. Anyways, At the Helm of the Abyss by Dead of Winter is also, it belongs on this list. We'll just say that. Another one I forgot about, I can't believe I forgot this, Satsogua is a German black metal band. They kind of like have this Sado kind of cyber black metal kind of style to them. And that especially was realized on their Transcon Whip album that came out in '98. But the album before that they did, Hosanna Bizarre, is very, very interesting. And it was sold to me, I think, back in the day as kind of a poor man's Marduk. But it's different enough that it doesn't need to be that. But it's really, really fun. I really like the way the vocalist kind of screams along with the certain blast beats. It's kind of interesting to hear the way the band puts together this kind of style. It's not 100% blasting all the time, but they are definitely known for a mighty, beefy, super fast, unrelenting black metal blast beat. And also, of that ilk, we are fucking ice! Imperial Crystalline Entombment. This is their debut demo EP, self-titled, has 4 songs. Astral Frost Invocation. The lineup of this band is mysteriously secretive. No one knows who is in this band, but they were strangely recorded at Night Sky Studios, so I have some suspicions that Ron Vento may have been involved. You may know him from Aurora Borealis. Awesome band. But this stuff is icy. It's frosty. It's cold. It's unrelenting and chilling to the bone. It sounds super slick and polished. Night Sky Studios knows exactly how to make a band sound fucking awesome. This thing is kind of a rarity. Kind of pricey. This is the Crash Music version of it. I believe there was like 2 issues, but it's been out of print since it came out in 2004. And yeah, icy, frosty, icicles dripping off of your bones. This thing rules. I think this is one of those if you know, you know albums. These guys fucking rule. Kind of different. We had a short-lived band here called Bale or Bale, B-A-E-L. I think they were from France. This came out on Spike Cult, I think. I thought this came out on Spike Cult. I could be wrong. But this, Spike Cult is the label that Herva from Antaeus, the singer, ran. This thing, though, this is one of the most destructive guitar tones I've ever heard on a black metal release. I still haven't heard anything that matches this. It's crunchy and devastating, but also just grim and shrill like you would expect a black metal tone to be. It's awesome. These 4 songs are about all you can actually stomach of this level of intensity and just grating, nightmarish black metal guitar sound. It's awesome. Overall, it's just grating in such a satisfying way. Couldn't leave out Bleeding for Him by Bale. Down to the last couple. These are absolutely no slouch whatsoever. This is a band from Sweden who only did this album, Of Battle and Ancient Warcraft by Battlelust. What a great name. And like, as you can imagine, very, very war-themed. A lot of just blasting going on, of course. There's a little bit of Swedish melodicism. In fact, this kind of reminds me a little bit of Dissection here and there, a little bit of Cythereal. But I really wish these guys would have gone on to do more. I think these guys went on to be in other bands, but I don't know. Haven't really kept track of them, but this is an awesome release. I don't know, it just kind of got buried among a lot of other releases that were kind of similar to it for its time. It came out in 97, I think, maybe 98 on Hammerheart. Kind of hard to find copies of, but I don't think you'll have to pay a lot to get one. Rules, anyways. Also, speaking of Sweden, and I believe they're from kind of around the same area as Battle Lust. We've got Blotmane. That band is, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but their debut was called Porphyrogenesis, and it was just reissued on, that. So you can find copies of it for cheap. Finally, this thing is back in print. But again, it's quite a bit like your Cythereal, your first couple of Cythereals, your In Battles, which, by the way, like, I'm leaving off a lot of obvious choices off of this, like In Battle's pretty obvious, Cythereal's pretty obvious. I'm leaving, like, Abigor, of course, Immortal, a lot of that stuff. Those are, you know, pretty obvious choices that would fit this bill. So I'm choosing things that are, like, very, very way down in the depths kind of digging. But Blotmane is one of those. And Porphyrogenesis was out of print for a really long time. Originally came out in 98. They followed it up with a great album also called Ash Cloud, which you can get for pretty cheap now. But Porphyrogenesis was awesome. So the drummer that played on the first Cythereal, Nord, went on to play in Blotmane, and then he started playing guitar and didn't play drums on another album again. I might be wrong. It might have been in Black Winds. I'm not sure. But, like, the Cythereal's Nord is one of the most perfect albums you'll ever hear. And Lords of the Night Realm also definitely belongs on this list, but it's kind of a more well-known kind of thing. So he played bass in Black Winds. He also did drum in Midwinter, which I don't really care a whole lot for. But yeah, he only played drums on the first couple of demos by Cythereal. He did drums in Sorhin too. I forgot about that. Sorhin fucking rules, but it's not as blasty as this kind of stuff. But Blotmane, oh, it's so great. Just the very subtle guitar harmony leads going on with the just over the top of the really violent riffing is excellent and choice. So back to Italy for one more. Weird band name, weird album title. I am not surprised whatsoever that nobody really gives a shit about this band or album. The cover is horrible. Everything about this thing, it's just bad choices all around. The band is called Handful of Hate. I hate it. The album is called Hierarchy 1999. And the cover is god awful. But sometimes it's an album like this that just blows you away because it's not giving you any signs that it's going to be amazing. This thing might be either this or Empalagon, I think, are going to be my favorite of this whole pile. I actually listened to this thing quite a bit, and the song Stifled into Extremism, so frosty, so grim, so absolutely fast. This is the kind of music, I think, when I am angry or frustrated or stressed, I want to hear something that is more intense than I can bear to feel. And so I put on headphones. I like to listen to something like this to just kind of like soak those emotions out of my brain. And that's one of the things I love about metal and how violent and rage-filled it can sound. And this is one of those albums that just satisfies so fucking well. So don't overlook this band just because they're called Handful of Hate and the album's called Hierarchy 1999. This thing is a gem. Man, I swear, not a single album in this whole pile is not a gem. But I'm going to end it with a kind of fun one. This band is called Sportlov. They're from Sweden, and the album is called Offerblad I Valabad. All the lyrics were in Swedish, but they really were like a comedy black metal band. Members, so this is Matthias Moden, who played in Defleshed. Love Defleshed. He did a little bit in Dark Funeral. He's a really talented, blasty drummer, and in fact, I found out today he went on to do like a solo project called Offerblood. The singer on this band passed away in 2018. Kind of sad. But this album is all skiing themed. They did a debut EP called Snowballs Krieg. But so there's all kinds of like Swedish jokes and humor going over this thing. So a lot of the stuff goes like well over my head, but you see the ski poles with the hot dogs on them. They also have like I think there's like a Bathory reference in their logo, and their band photo is a polar bear in there. And these guys have, you see the flames and the corpse paint, but also they have their skiing caps on. So fucking good. They also, like, one of the members of the band is named Doom Occulta. A lot of fun, but this thing is violent. It's got a pretty clean clarity to the sound, but it is super intense. I would not be surprised if these guys are breaking the 250 BPM speed. And that's about where I get to the point of like, yeah, stop it. These guys hit hard. It rules. All for Blood, Evala Blood. Check this one out too. I'll try and put a couple of samples for this stuff in here. I got to really watch it with the YouTube samples, actually. I got a copyright strike, I think. The way that YouTube has like communicated that to me has been like not helpful whatsoever, so I don't really know what to do about it, but I want to be careful. I like 3 strikes, I believe, and your channel is dead. So I don't want to do that to you guys or myself. So that's it. This is a lot of stuff for you to check out. If you like videos like this, go ahead and check out my Patreon. I got a lot of videos on there that also do little deep dive topics and stuff. So thank you. Check this stuff out, and we'll see you next time. Woo-hoo! That was a great video, and it was made possible mostly by me, but also thanks to the never-ending, undying love and support of my Patreon subscribers, some of whom are... If you would like to be a part of supporting my channel and encouraging me to make more content that's as good as the one you just watched, join the Patreon. It's $6.66 a month, and I would appreciate your support. Thanks for watching either way.